The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this lovely Wednesday morning or afternoon for the folks on the East Coast. My name is Emily. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Community Relations for Solve M.E. CFS initiative. It's so wonderful to have you all joining us for this unique walkthrough of our You M.E. Registry and Biobank. So just before we get started, I want to give you a quick walkthrough of how to use our system. So we're using our GoToWebinar platform today. You are all muted for the time being. Sadie and Oved will take questions at the end of the presentation. If you would like to submit your question for consideration for the Q&A panel, just use the red question box you can see right there highlighted at the bottom of your GoToWebinar tool. And so we are so pleased to have you join us. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Oved Amitay, our CEO and Director and President of Solve M.E. CFS initiative.
Thank you very much, Emily, and welcome everybody. It really is a wonderful opportunity for me to first just introduce myself. I recently joined the organization as the President and Chief Operating Officer, and I couldn't think of a better, really better way to get introduced to all of you today. I spent about 25 years working on the development of therapies for people affected by orphan diseases. Orphan diseases are diseases that, by definition, impact less than 200,000 people in the US. And there are typically diseases that are not well understood because of the smaller patient population. And so my first introduction to our registry was when we were working on the development of a therapy for a rare disease called Gaucher disease. And at the time, the clinical trial involved only 12 people. The drug was very effective, and the FDA actually approved the drug, but the FDA suggested that we set up a registry to continue to follow up not only on those people who received the therapy, but everybody else, and really to learn much more about the disease. And so my personal experience has been that registries are really a remarkable tool for us to understand diseases that are not well characterized. Just increases so much more when we use a database that is larger and that really invites people from all over the world to participate in that research effort. So that is just to say that I'm a very big believer in the power that such registries really have. And I'm here just to introduce you to Sadie Whittaker, who's really been the person behind this remarkable effort to bring the registry together. And Sadie, with Allison and the rest of the team here at Solve, really enabled us to get to this point today when we can actually share this with all of you in what I believe would be ultimately the most robust data set in the history of ME/CFS, and really could lead to a much better understanding of the disease, and obviously to the development of diagnostics and ultimately therapies, which we are all working to achieve. So, Sadie, floor is all yours.
Giving me a warning signal. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As Oved said, this has kind of been a labor of love for the past 18 months to set up what we believe is this really robust infrastructure for data capture that I firmly believe is going to transform our understanding of this disease, help us to identify subtypes, treatments, and really help us to pick apart some of that heterogeneity that we're all familiar with this disease. I want to take a moment before I go into the presentation just to let you know that everything you're going to see today is really as a result of partnership with the community, and you all have been incredibly generous with your time, with your energy, And every step of the way in the development of this registry and the symptom tracking app that we're going to walk through a little later was done in collaboration with the community, with input from you, and we're continuing that process. So while the registry is now live, and I'm going to show you some numbers of the people who are already in the registry, we are continuing to see this as an evolving process, and we're continuing to gain feedback from the community with individuals across the severity spectrum to make sure this is the optimum experience. It's helpful for you and it's helpful to fuel research. So it's an ongoing, evolving beast right now, and thank you for everything that you guys have done to help us to get to this place. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. Some of you may have seen on social media or on our emails talking about this this term big data. It means a lot of data, essentially. It means, individual information from thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals with a disease. And by having enough information, you can start to look at a higher level and say, oh, there's some patterns over here, or there's some characteristics over here that seem to cluster. And based on that, you can identify specific treatments for specific patient profiles. So, in the cancer space, you've seen the fruits of that, right? Breast cancer, single disease, 20 years ago, and now you see it's multiple different diseases, each with a very specific subtype, and each that responds to a very different combination of treatments. So that's where we're headed towards, right? So, a single global registry, and what I mean by that is let's unite different data sources of people who have information about ME/CFS together into a single global unified data source, and I believe has the biggest potential to identify causes and treatments for this disease, and will really revolutionize our understanding. I think the other thing that, the current pandemic, the situation with the current pandemic, many people are out of the labs right now, but it's exciting to us to have this opportunity to start to collect data that isn't dependent on people being in the labs, so that when people start to come back in, suddenly we can say, here is a wealth of information that you can begin to use to study ME/CFS more holistically. So the next slide just shows you kind of a little bit of the process of the registry. So if you can start on the number one, which is in kind of the top right, about the 1 o'clock on the, yeah, thanks, Em. So anyone can sign up with ME/CFS and healthy controls. You sign up on a desktop portal and you enter baseline information. I'm going to talk you through some of those screens in a second so you can see exactly what information we're collecting. You have the option then to download the symptom tracking app, and I'm going to show you some of the screens from that, and we'll watch a video that walks through the mobile symptom tracking app. And then those symptoms, life events, activity levels, and overall wellness are tracked on an ongoing basis. Then we'll ask people with confirmed disease and healthy controls to provide blood samples. We're looking at, a tube of blood for some people. We're looking at also the viability of dry blood spot cards, which is just something that could be mailed out to individuals, and they put the spot on the card and mail it back. So a lot of the logistical components are taken away with that, and so that's something we're very interested in. And then researchers are going to be able to search this global database and say, okay, I want these 200 patients meeting these characteristics, and then they'll apply to us for use of the biosamples. That application will be reviewed by a panel of experts in research, and will include some individuals with ME/CFS on that group. If they are approved, they can have access to the data and biosamples. So I've mentioned a little bit about the co-creation, right? It was really important to us right out of the gate that we not try and do this ourselves, that it was going to be a combined effort. Sorry, Anne, if you can just go back to the previous. But it was a key driver from us right from the get-go. Collaboration, I talked about wanting to create this global resource. We already have collaborations with groups in Australia and the UK who are also collecting data in registries, and that process is moving along, and it's starting, that global data vision is starting to become a reality. That will carry on, right? We want to bring more partners on as we go. And then easy and ongoing data capture. I'm going to talk a little bit about the app shortly, but we wanted that process to be both easy, useful for individuals, but then also create this really rich longitudinal data set that researchers could use. So go to the next slide, please, Em. So this just gives you a flavor of what we're going to collect, and I'm going to show you some of the screens in a sec, but you onboard, do the informed consent, provide some basic information, and then you have a whole bunch of surveys to complete. At the biosample collection time point, we're going to ask you to update your comorbid conditions and medications and fill in a symptom questionnaire. And then at 6-month follow-up, we're going to ask you to update a couple things, as well as repeat the functional scale and quality of life. And if you look at the top there, you see the symptom tracking app. For those of you who choose to use it, and we hope many of you do, you will have that ongoing data from the symptom tracking app as well. So I think now we're going to just watch a quick video about how it works.
ME/CFS is one of the few remaining highly prevalent debilitating diseases about which very little is known. That's why we need you. People with ME/CFS hold the key to unlocking the causes and treatments for this disease. Many of you already track your own symptoms and experiences with ME/CFS, and that data tell a story that helps you manage your disease on a day-to-day basis. That same information can be shared with researchers through the You M.E Registry to drive research studies. Here's how it works. People with ME/CFS and healthy controls provide health information through secure online surveys. It's important to understand how ME/CFS changes over time, so participants also use a mobile app to regularly track how they're feeling. We'll ask some people to provide biological samples, like saliva or blood. By looking at your health information alongside data from thousands of others, we will be able to see a more complete picture of ME/CFS. When your data are used or discoveries are made, we'll let you know. Working together, we can answer the questions that are most important to people with ME/CFS and improve the lives of those living with this chronic condition. Join the You M.E movement today.
I'm going to, next few slides, going to walk you through some screens about the online platform. So this is kind of, once you've enrolled and done the informed consent, this is kind of the page that you get to. This is your survey dashboard. So the button on the left, the studies I'm enrolled in, that's something that you're going to be able to click on once we have additional studies outside of the registry. And then obviously the button on the right is for downloading the mobile app. The green bar at the bottom I think is really interesting. So we integrated an algorithm into the system so that when you complete the symptoms assessment, it will tell you what criteria you fulfill. So you see there, you know, your responses fulfill the Fukuda criteria, ICC, and the IOM criteria. And so we thought this was a really important feature to kind of give people who may have struggled to get a clinical diagnosis some degree of clinical validation that the symptoms that they have are reflective of a diagnosis. And when we did user testing with this, it's been very well received. So then if you look on the right, you can see how the information is being collected. You can upload a profile picture. You have my data, medications, and then you can see the progress on surveys underneath. So you see Alison's done 45% of her demographic information and 2% of her health history. So if we go to the next screen, I can show you what some of those screens look like. So this is the conditions dashboard. So this is kind of comorbid conditions. You would click on that green lozenge button, add a condition, and there's going to be a drop down that you can pick which category, and you can create a running list of comorbid conditions. And then similarly for surgeries, you just click the button and add any surgeries. Next slide, please, Emily. Treatments. So we're collecting both current and previous medications. And when you click that add treatment button, you'll get a drop down of medications. There's also an option to add one if one isn't there, but the list we have is very comprehensive. And you can add in whatever you can recall from prior medications, acknowledging that that's going to be potentially difficult to remember. And then a list of current medications. Our plan is to, it's not currently live, but it's in development, that list of current medications will populate over to the symptom tracking app, so that you'll have that list there, and then you can toggle them on and off as things move forward. So that's the treatments dashboard. And then next slide, please, Em. So this is where the surveys are. This was a screenshot from my dashboard as a healthy control. As you can see, 100%, so I get top marks for completion, as you would hope. But this is where, you know, you can click into the different surveys and fill them out. And we're going to look at what one of those surveys looks like in the next slide. So this is the Bayesian questionnaire around hypermobility. So somebody, this is often done in a clinical setting, but somebody was able to digitize it. And so we were able to take that digitized form and transform it into a questionnaire within the registry. So you can see kind of how, and this is an example of how the questionnaires work in general. It kind of walks you through, so you know that you would click in this trunk flexion question, you would click whichever one of the numbers is most appropriate, and then go to the next. It would ask you the next question, so on and so on. And then obviously we have the save and come back later button, which enables you to do exactly that, save and come back later. And all of the surveys have that, so you can complete it slowly over time, or you can do it all at once if that's what you want to do. So that's an example of the questionnaires. So there's numerous questionnaires within the system that look as similar to that. So we have a quick survey question coming up, and Emily's going to bring that up, but we have a couple of questions. Have you already joined our community? So if you don't mind selecting yes, no, or started but not completed.
Wonderful. We'll leave this poll up for just a few moments so that everyone has a chance to respond. I see that 60% of our audience has voted. Thank you all so much. I'll just give it a few more moments so everyone can jump in and have their voice be heard. Awesome. We're at a 75% response rate. Excellent. Thank you all so much for participating. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll in just a couple seconds. Make sure everyone has a chance to log your vote. Make sure you check in. All right. Going to close it 3 and 2, 1. We're going to close the poll. So we have
okay,
our
well,
results.
I'm pleased that we have 46% who've either joined or started but not completed, and for the 54% of you who have not yet, I'm hoping that this presentation and webinar today will persuade you to do it. It's really, we're trying to create this sense of community, and we encourage you all to be a part of it. So hopefully I'll be persuasive enough during this webinar that will convert those 54% over into the yes bucket. Thank you for that. And then I think we have a subsequent question, which is, if you haven't joined, is there a particular reason why not? And it'd be interesting to us to know, you know, if there's a barrier to joining.
Absolutely. So for those of you who have not yet joined our registry, if you could give us a little more information about why you haven't been interested, or what we can do to improve the process. So we've got 28% of folks who have voted on this question. We'll just give it a few more minutes so everybody can participate. Again, you just select your answer by clicking on the screen with your mouse at the appropriate answer that you'd like to include. And if there's other answers that we didn't have here, feel free to send them in the question box. We'll definitely appreciate that feedback. Actually, one question that just came in is the app free?
Yeah.
Yes, it is, and free.
Yeah, the app is free, but you access it because of the informed consent part of it, right? We're obviously very, very strict around the security of your data. So you have to, and you can't just get the app from the App Store. You have to come in via the registry to complete the informed consent, and then you'll be able to download that app. But it is absolutely free.
Wonderful. Well, I see 52% of folks have responded to this question. I'm just going to leave it open for just a moment, and we'll go ahead and close this poll in 3, 2, 1. All right, and now I'll share the results.
Okay, well, I am pleased to see that only 3% think it's not worth their time. Obviously, that's a concern, right? That the value of this is not recognised by the community. So, for those of you who have been meaning to, I hope that this presentation will give you that extra motivation or boost to do that. And then, for those of you who are uncomfortable sharing health information, we'd be happy to share a link to our data privacy language from our microsite. I can tell you that everything that we do is gone through numerous rounds of legal counsel and IRB approval. So we have a very secure system, and your data privacy is the most important thing to us. So we'd be happy to share that after we log off from the webinar. And perhaps if there are additional questions around that, we'd be happy to field them.
Sadie, maybe you mentioned IRB. Maybe that's a good comment just to stop for a minute and explain what the IRB is and what is the role of the IRB with the registry.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not familiar, I think it stands for International Review Board. It's a group of individuals who are independent from organizations. There are professionals in clinical care, research, and there is also patient representation. They're not specific to any particular disease, but they everything that you have to do that involves collecting data or research or any kind of study, there's a submission to the IRB that's very comprehensive, where you complete information about what you're doing, why, very specific information about what you're going to collect, the data privacy, how the system's set up. They require all of the back-end technical stuff. So it's a very robust process that obviously we're subject to. So that's kind of one aspect of it. And then obviously from the legal perspective, we have experts in data privacy and security who we have working alongside us to make sure that we're upholding all of the appropriate regulations. And we take data privacy obviously incredibly seriously. And so we go hand in hand with legal counsel on that.
And Sadie, if I can jump in with a quick question. I've noticed on our webinar, we have a couple folks who are joining us from internationally, from outside of the US. Welcome to our international friends. Perhaps you could explain where we are in the process for US versus non-US contributions to the registry.
Yeah, so our IRB is broad in the sense that it allows enrollment from ex-US participants, so globally. The way our system is set up, it's GDPR compliant, which is the European data privacy compliance law. So it's aligned with Europe has the strictest data privacy laws, and it's aligned with the strictest data privacy laws. The reason we haven't opened it globally out of the gate is because I mentioned we are working with partners in Europe, and so we are still kind of figuring out with them processes for local sample collection. So someone might come into the registry and enter data, but then the sample collection would happen locally. And so we're really just kind of negotiating what that's going to look like and figuring that process out before we enroll international participants. But we are super excited about it. And I mentioned we have partners in the UK and Australia currently. Our goal is to find partners in all of the different regions around the world who can do that local sample collection. Okay, so I think the next thing is we have some metrics to show you guys. So we've had an amazing response, which we're really excited about. We have been live. I think we opened it to a small group of people towards the end of May, and we've made it available to everybody from about mid-June. So in about 6 weeks, we've enrolled 1,100 people, so 1,139. Just over 1,000 of those with ME CFS and 129 controls. Part of the reason there's such a skew between those two numbers is just because we haven't done targeted outreach to controls yet. So we've been kind of taking it step by step and doing more of a kind of roll out to the community first and then make it a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And we've sort of been taking a bit of a staged approach. But our goal is to get those control and ME CFS numbers to be more aligned with each other. so that you know, obviously if you're going to do research, you need someone with the disease and someone without the disease, and we want those parallel paths. Our demographics won't be surprising to anyone on this call, so 80% female, 20% male, and then predominantly white people have signed up. So I think one of the goals that we have for the coming months is to look at approaches to make sure that we can diversify the enrollees who are participating in the registry, so that we have a better demographic spread that is more representative of the demographic spread within the disease. And then you can see the age distribution all the way on the right there. So, you know, looks like the kind of most people are in there like 42 to 49, 50 to 57, 58 to 65 kind of buckets. But that's the age distribution. So that's kind of where we are in our overall enrollment. And then the next slide just shows you what our enrollment by state. So we've been doing these every week. We've been looking at what our enrollment by state is, and so you see the key on the left-hand side. The darker the colour, the more enrollees in that particular state. So we're pretty pleased with the spread of enrollees across the country, and where the squares are cream and we don't have a huge number of enrollees, those will be targets for us as we start to partner with local groups. So, for example, we are working with the Mass CFIDS organisation, and they featured the registry in their newsletter. So we will be doing kind of targeted outreach like that to local groups. And in fact, the reason this map is purple, we posted this on social media last week and tagged the Minnesota group, and so we turned the map purple in commemoration of Prince. So we'll be doing that as we go along. Okay, so next I think we're going to transition to the mobile app, and so we'll start with a video and then I'll walk you through some of the screens more slowly.
Hello, welcome to the You M.E tracking app. How are you feeling today? The first time you open the app, you will arrive at the profile screen, which features a photo of your choosing, surrounded by your last reported general wellness score. From here, you can navigate to the calendar, tracking, Insights, and Settings tab. Let's take a look at your calendar. Here, you can see your month at a glance, so you always know when you've logged your symptoms. There's no need to worry about keeping track of symptom tracking. You can always customize push notifications in the Settings tab, so they alert you right on schedule every time. Your first stop in the Tracking tab is a screen pre-populated with 5 core ME CFS symptoms. The Add Symptoms button allows you to include any additional symptoms that you may experience. You can then tap the arrows to rearrange your symptoms according to your liking, or swipe left on a non-core symptom to remove it at any time. You can then use the slider to rank these on a scale from 0 to 4. During a period of PEM, you'll be asked to estimate how long you've been experiencing this symptom and what you think triggered it. If any of the symptoms did not apply to you that day, simply leave the slider at 0. In the treatment screen, you can keep track of the various things you do to make yourself feel better. If you've entered treatments in the user portal, they will also show up here. In the Life Event screen, you can track day-to-day moments and begin to uncover hidden relationships between these events and your overall well-being. In the Activity screen, you can log the time you spent doing things. This includes an estimate of the number of hours you've been upright, inspired by the Bateman Horne Center's Hours of Feet on the Floor measure. Next is the General Wellness screen, where you can report an overall assessment of your well-being that day on a scale from 0 to 100. The last stop in the Tracking tab is the Journal screen. The way you use this one is completely up to you. The Insights tab has a feature that enables you to graph up to 5 symptoms alongside your general wellness score over a chosen period of time. The resulting graph visually depicts relationships between your symptoms and overall sense of well-being. The last stop is the Settings tab, where you can customize notifications and access other information and resources. You M.E. Start your tracking journey today.
Okay, Emily, you're making this look very seamless. I'm glad I'm not in charge of all of this flipping between the different screens. So obviously that was a quick tutorial about the app, but I wanted to spend a few minutes on the next few slides just showing you kind of more slowly what it looks like. This is the profile screen. You can upload a photo, and the circle around the edge there with the number 38, that's the general wellness score on the last time you checked in. And then you see the orange bar at the top there, it's time to do your tracking. Currently our cadence around tracking is every 3 days, and we came up with that cadence based on feedback and collaboration with the community, but you are also able to change that to more or less frequently depending on how comfortable you are or how often you want to track your symptoms. But whenever you set that push notification, you will get that orange bar, it's time to do your tracking. So next slide. So these are the symptoms, you saw these on the video. We have 5 core symptoms: brain fog, fatigue, orthostatic intolerance, unrefreshing sleep, and PEM. And you see those are kind of shaded in green. So we are asking people if they do nothing else or they don't add any more symptoms, if they can track those 5, that's going to be really helpful for us as we start to consolidate data at the population level. You can also add your own symptoms, and so you see on the right hand side screen you can toggle on what other symptoms that you have either intermittently or on an ongoing basis. And once you add those symptoms, they will appear in your symptom list, so they'll appear underneath this. They won't have the green shading. The green shading is just for the core symptoms, but whatever symptoms you add will appear. You can also reorder. You see those little arrows on the right hand side of each bar. You can reorder the symptoms within there if some are more or less important to you. And then you can also delete symptoms. So you can even delete the core symptoms if they're not appropriate to you. But you can delete and update and change the symptoms on an ongoing basis depending on how you're feeling during that period of time. And then the sliders just show you kind of the severity of symptoms. Sorry, if you can go back a sec. So you see all the way on the left, symptom not present, to all the way on the right, which is very severe. And so you would just pull those sliders depending on how you're feeling that day. Okay, next. This is the treatments page. So I mentioned here that our goal is in the very short term is to bring these across from the online portal. So these will populate across, and then you can toggle on and off which ones you took that day. If there are updates to your treatments, currently we're asking you to click back into the user portal to update that. But again, our goal is to have those 2 pieces of technology talk to each other in real time so that you're not toggling between 2 different platforms. But for right now, if a change is made, we're asking you to go back to the desktop portal. But if you're just kind of continuing to take the medication that you take on an ongoing basis, you can just toggle these on and off. This is life events. So these are the things that you might do in a day that may impact how you feel or your energy levels. And so you can see some of the ones listed there, and you can add new. We have a very exhaustive list of life events. You see on the right hand side screen, the way you can kind of find these is you start to type in that search bar, you start to type in the word that you might be looking for. So see, that one's travel, and we have the different options: Airbus, car travel, it's the day after travel, it's international travel. So if you wanted to capture information on life events, that also provides you an opportunity to figure out how your life events might impact your symptoms. So next slide. These are the activity levels. So you can do physical, cognitive, stress, exertion. You can talk about socializing, because we know that sometimes can be draining as well. We also record how many hours of sleep during the night, during the day, and then we integrated here Cindy Bateman's measure of hours of feet on the floor, and so you'll enter that metric in there. Again, in our phase 2, we'll be looking at ways to integrate activity trackers into this, which will, help with monitoring sleep as well as activity levels. So that's kind of an update which is coming soon, but this is kind of where we started. And then this screen is just the general wellness. So if you remember that profile screen that I showed you on the first slide with the person in the middle and the slider around the outside, this is where that information comes from. So you'll slide this slider So 0 is the worst you've ever felt, 100 is the best you've ever felt, and you would slide depending on how you feel that day. And then that information populates kind of onto your home profile screen. So when you first come back to it the next time, that's the first thing that you're going to see. Next slide. So this is another survey question. So if you have joined the community, are you using the app? Do you intend to? And these are some of your options: already using it, still setting it up, don't intend to use it, don't own a mobile device, uncomfortable with mobile device. So if you don't mind just filling in the poll on this, this will be really helpful for us as we think more about the symptom tracking app.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for participating and including your feedback. So we'll keep the poll open for just a few more moments. You can select your answer by moving your mouse over your answer and clicking to fill in the button. I only need to click once. We have 35% of folks voting, so we'll just wait a few more minutes so more people can contribute their information. And also, if you have an answer to this question that's not listed on this poll, feel free to enter it into our question box. We are recording all of the answers, and the whole webinar will be recorded and available on YouTube at the end of the day. I just saw that question pop across the screen, so I wanted to answer that for you. We have 41% of people voted. We'll give it just a few more moments. And again, if you have an answer that's not listed here, feel free to share it with us on the questions tab, and we'll integrate that into our data. All of this is an attempt to improve the registry that you helped us build for meeting your needs. All right, so I see a few more people came in. We'll go ahead and close the poll in 3, 2, 1. And now we'll share the results.
Okay, well, I'm pleased that nobody is not intending to use it. So this is great. This makes me feel very happy because obviously we created this in response to the community. Many people were tracking their own symptoms, you know, in Excel sheets or on paper. So pleased to see that there is some enthusiasm around it. The next couple of slides, I'm going to show you kind of some feedback that we got from the community. If there are any issues with setting it up that we can answer, or you have any additional feedback that, you know, is a little more comprehensive than just in the polls, we'd be more than happy to hear that. And you can email us at research@solvecfs.org, and we can also send that out after this webinar. But like I said at the beginning of this, our goal is for this to not have just been created with the community, but that continue to evolve and grow with the community as this takes shape. So, all right, so the next few slides, I'm just going to talk to you about the mobile app. So our usage, we have 400 users. We have 93 days tracked, about 9.7 days tracked per user. We're going to get more granularity into exactly what that looks like as we go along. This is just kind of a first snapshot of our use. This is aligned with what our metrics were. We expected around 30 to 40% of people would use the app who are enrolled in the registry, and this is aligned with that. So our goals are going to be make sure people continue to use it, increase the number of people using it. Again, I mean, it's the ability to create a moving picture of this disease versus a snapshot, right? So you fill in information once online, or you visit your doctor once every period of time. That's this tiny snapshot. And what we know about this disease is it fluctuates over time. It's sensitive to activity levels, different things that people do. And so being able to create this really rich longitudinal data set gives researchers such a more detailed view into what's really going on. It's a representation of your lived experience, which is such a valuable resource for research. So I mentioned that we had done some surveys. So we did send out a community feedback form, and this is some of the feedback from the app in particular. So this was our net promoter score. Oh no, this was our overall satisfaction. So you can see, you know, the 7, 8, 9, 10, that's the high end of satisfaction. So we were pleased to see those results come in. And then the next slide just shows you some quotes that we had from the community. Like I said, everybody's been so sort of generous and engaged with this that every time we push something out, we've been inundated with information, which has really helped us evolve and enhance this. So you see some of the comments here. I'm pleased to have joined this app. I don't feel so alone. Some comments here. I'd like to see the information I've recorded in the app in a summarized form and in a format I could print and save. That's some feedback we've also got previously, that people want to be able to have this information that they can print out and share with their healthcare team or even with their family. And so that's something we're working on in the background. And then you see the middle box there. This is someone who was kind enough to give us some really detailed feedback, and we've already implemented most of these fixes. So these were very kind of in the weeds, right? Instead of typing out this, let me just check a box. Instead of updating all my medications, can I just say uncheck everything? So these are little changes, but that make a significant difference to the usability, and we've already implemented most of those. Then you see technology overwhelms me sometimes. I'll get to it eventually. So, less enthusiasm, but that's also important information. And then on the right-hand side, I'm super happy this tool has been developed. I've had this disease for a while, homebound and live alone. So I'm pleased at the feedback we're getting for two reasons, right? One, it helps us make this better, but two, even beyond the kind of the technology itself and the usability, it's creating a sense of community, which is a big goal for what we've been trying to do here. We want people to feel part of this. We've committed to kind of sharing information back, sharing data back. People are going to be able to suggest research studies. We want this to feel like a community, and so it's satisfying to me that that's starting to be realized. And to that end, just a couple slides on our microsite. So if you haven't been on this website, I'd encourage you to go on it. It's YouME It has a bunch of information about the registry. We have some videos from patients. We have blogs. We're always looking for content. Our goal is to create a patient community board where people can engage and interact, and that's something that we have in development. But the goal, like I said, is to create this sense of community and togetherness. And I think if you go on our microsite, hopefully that will come across. And then the next slide on our microsite, this is something I'd also encourage you to check out. So this is our ME impact tool. This was something, I think it's on the top menu, it just says ME impact. This is something that we created to really give people a data visualization of what it's like to live with this disease. So obviously it's not super comprehensive, it's not super clinical, it's meant to just be a snapshot. So you fill in, it's a quiz, you fill in you answer a variety of questions about how the disease is impacting your life, and then you get your full year at a glance. And the goal here is to be someone who's not as familiar with the disease to be able to look at that image on the right and say, oh my gosh, this is so consuming. This is, it's eclipsing everything else in this person's life, and we need to do something about that. So that's really the goal with it. We are going to be launching a social media campaign in the next few weeks where we're going to be asking people to share their impact tool, both from awareness building, but also to encourage healthy controls to sign up for the registry. So look out for that. And, if we can encourage you to kind of go on and do this quiz and share it, it would really help us out for both those reasons, making sure people are aware of the impact that this can have, as well as encouraging healthy control signups. So this is my last slide, so I'll just end with this, right? This is something we set up right at the beginning of the development of the registry. I've talked a lot about we believe in community, and hopefully it's evident that is coming through, and that will continue to be a driving force for us. We empower with information. We wanted in the development of the symptom tracking app in the registry to give people a place that they could collate the information about their illness and use it to empower themselves to have a conversation with their doctor or their family, or to even for themselves, right, to be able to say, I'm not imagining this, look, these things are happening to me, and this is what's impacting my well-being. We insist on progress. Like I said, we're going to continue to evolve this. In addition, we're at 1,000 patients already, which has exceeded our expectations. We're already starting to think about, okay, how could we analyze this data? We already have a significant number of people in here. Are there ways that we could start to pick apart that data and look at it ourselves? We're not waiting for researchers to come to us. obviously we want to collaborate with researchers and this to be a foundational resource for them, but we're going to continue to drive that regardless and make sure that we're demonstrating the value of this amount of information. And then we amplify with collaboration. So yeah, our goal is not for this to be a siloed resource. I've talked a little bit about collaborations with Australia and the UK. We'll continue to work with clinicians in the US to see if we can bring them on board, or anyone who's got pieces of data or data silos. Our goal is to try and bring all of that information together to create the largest possible data set for research. So you can go to our website to learn more, or you can contact us with any thoughts and feedback. We're always keen to hear from you at research@solvecfs.org. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions now or in the chat box, and I think Emily will tell you how to do that.
Absolutely. So we've had some amazing questions coming in as you've been speaking. So I'm going to try to pull them all together in our last few moments of our time together for this webinar. I'll just, for those who are managing your spoons, we will be going about 5 minutes over time, just letting you know in case you have another obligation. So the first question, Sadie, comes from Raphael. And I'm going to combine it with another question as well, who asked, which diagnostic criteria do you use, or how do you confirm diagnosis for patients who are entering the registry? And that's actually overlapping with another person's question that was asking about folks who are self-diagnosed and if they can also include the registry.
Yeah, so let me take the second question first. We purposefully wanted this to be open to those who are self-diagnosed. We know a big issue with this disease is an inability to get a clinical diagnosis. So we're very inclusive. And the integration of the symptoms assessment and the algorithm that maps to the criteria, like I said, was an attempt to give people validation that their symptoms did match a criteria for this disease. Something which is in pipeline and kind of still developing, but we're looking at the possibility of integrating a virtual healthcare provider engagement part of the registry, where people who enroll in the registry would be able to connect with an ME/CFS healthcare provider if they haven't already got a diagnosis, to be able to, you know, confirm what they believe is this disease. So that piece is coming, but our funnel is very big. In terms of the criteria that the algorithm maps to, we're going to map it against Fukuda, ICC, and IOM, so you'll be able to see, you know, which of the criteria you meet, or if you meet all of them.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. The next question, we have a couple questions that got a little bit more into the data side of things. So the first question from Christopher is our data anonymized in the database?
So it will be anonymized for researchers. So the only people who will see de-identified data are myself and members of my team. So it's a very controlled group. So I have 2 people on my team and myself, and we are the only people who are, both from an IRB perspective and a data privacy perspective, are able to see de-identified data. Beyond that, every piece of data will be anonymized. So researchers will only be able to see fully anonymized data as you know, if they're searching the database for studies.
And a follow-up to that question regarding the data, what about the data for folks who had been in the previous biobank back under the CFIDS Association of America, and will that be added to the data in this existing in the new registry?
Yeah, so we are looking at bringing across those individuals, but a lot of the data collection is quite different. So our goal is to kind of bring across whatever is still appropriate from that old system, but there will be an additional request to add, you know, to complete some more surveys and to update information that's currently in there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So now the next questions are in line with the app and the registering of information and intake. First question comes from Elizabeth. Are supplements taken into consideration along with medications, and can they be entered into the registry as well?
Yep. That was a short answer, but yes. Yeah, we do have supplements in there. Obviously, that's you know, a lot of people rely on supplements to to be functional. And so obviously that's an important thing that is included in the medications tab.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that question from Elizabeth. We have a couple more that came in. I'm just catching up. Thank you all for your patience. This question comes from Paula. Why join the registry? Why not join the registry answer pertaining to me? What's that? Oh, sorry, Paula. I'm trying to read your question. Comorbidity with other illnesses. So, and this also dovetails with another question from another patient. Is what if your response for your overall wellness is not necessarily related to ME, but you have something else going on at the same time? So Paula's question is specifically about a comorbidity with cancer and and other comorbidities. Does that impact your wellness score, and how do you separate the two?
So currently the wellness score isn't specific to any one thing that you have or that you're dealing with at that moment. It's just, we will be able to obviously look alongside and say, okay, this person has all of these comorbid conditions, and all of that is weighing into the overall wellness. So it's something that we'll be able to look by looking at two pieces of information alongside each other. We did consider, like, do we want to call out the general wellness specific to any CFS? I don't think that's how people are, right? People feel well or not well, depending on a number of factors: emotional, mental, physical, comorbidities, what they did that day. So I think where we landed was that we wanted a snapshot of general wellness. We will be able to see if people are suffering with multiple comorbid illnesses at that same time. And, we acknowledge that that wellness score is going to be representative of a whole host of things. So I hope that answers your question. Like, please type another one if you have a follow-up based on that. But I think it's just too difficult, I think, to try and split out how do you feel about your ME/CFS today? Like, it's too I think it's too difficult to say, well, my ME/CFS, I feel a 25, but I'm also dealing with cancer, and that's making me feel like, a 10. I think it's too difficult. So it's just an overall wellness score that takes into account all aspects of your life.
Wonderful, thank you. And I think the ability to input kind of activities to accompany with those wellness scores will be really helpful as well, especially tracking post-exertional malaise and kind of the impact of activity over time.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing with the wellness score is it's intrapersonal, right? Like, it's the best the worst you've ever felt, or the best you've ever felt. It's very hard. It's such a subjective measure. So it's looking at intrapersonally, how are things affecting you, right? Like, you might go from feeling really well to not feeling really well. And so we're able to look at the comorbidities, the medications, the stuff that's happened to you, and maybe pick apart why your wellness score has continued to go down or up.
Wonderful. Well, the next series of questions are looking at kind of the future of the registry and the next steps of where we're heading. The first is a question about incorporating pediatrics for folks who are who are under 18, who are experiencing ME/CFS. When will they be able to participate? And the second question is about biosample collection and when we can anticipate that process rolling out.
Yeah, so the pediatric flow, or the pediatric entryway, is in development. We have it sketched out, and it's with our computer developers, so they'll be building out the pediatric flow of what a data entry looks like for that, and then we would resubmit to our IRB, get approval for the pediatric data collection. So I would say probably in the next 2 months, we'll have the pediatric portal available. And then the question about biosample collection, again, that's something that's in development. We've fine-tuned what biosamples we're going to collect, and as I said, right now we're thinking that dry blood spot cards for everybody, and tubes of blood for certain people is probably the way we're going to go, and that's partly because of just the ease of doing the dry blood spot cards, being able to do it at home. And you can get a ton of information. Oved can probably speak to this because in his previous life he worked a lot with this technology, but the technology on dry blood spot cards has just come such a long way that you can get a lot of information from that piece, that one finger prick. And then if we have specific research studies that people are interested in, we always have the option to go back for additional sample collection. So I'm realizing I'm not answering your question. I would say our sample collection will probably start probably October 1, around that time frame. Just quite honestly, the response has taken us a little bit by surprise, where we are thrilled, but it's been a lot of people in a short period of time who've signed up. And so that's just kind of, we've pushed our biosample collection processes just down the road a little bit until we can kind of get a handle on the enrollment numbers.
Thank you. The next series of questions are a little bit in the category of data sharing.
Okay.
The first question is about sharing the tracking information and the health information provided through the mobile app to healthcare professionals for individual healthcare decisions. And the second one is about how researchers will be able to look at that data and whether or not they'll be able to ask questions directly to folks who are participating.
So the healthcare provider thing, I think I touched on this. That's some feedback we've got consistently, right? Like, we need to be able to synthesize all of this, what we enter in the desktop portal, what we track on the app. We need to be able to produce a report that I can take to my doctor between visits or for an initial visit, like I said, or even for family members, right, who might be dubious that something's actually wrong. So it is something we're working on, and it's something that I think, the thing with data, right, is you have to give people the data they need in a format that they can easily grasp it at the time when they need it. So rather than everything, right? So it would be easy to say, okay, here's everything. But what we're working on with clinicians is to figure out, like, what would a useful thing look like for you? A one-pager maybe that has a snapshot of how that patient's doing at baseline, their medications, their comorbid conditions, how they're doing on surveys, and then maybe information from the symptom tracking app about how those symptoms have graphed over time. I think you saw in the video, you can graph your symptoms over time. You can set as long a time period as you want. And so we're working with clinicians now to map out that kind of that one pager. And then once we've done that, then it's the technical part of it, right? The programming to figure out how to translate what we have in the system into this one pager that individuals could print out and easily, put in front of their healthcare teams. So that's the question on the HCPs. On the researcher side, there's going to be a portal. Again, this is in development with our programmers, but there's going to be a portal where researchers can come to the system. They'll see at the population level what's in there. They'll say there's 1,100 people in here, this many healthy controls, this many individuals with the disease, this many men, this many women, some very high level kind of demographics, so they kind of have a sense of it. And then based on that, they'll be able to apply, fill out a form that will get vetted to be able to sort of search the database. Once they're approved, they'll search the database, and they might say, for my study, I'm looking for a cohort of 200 people with moderate disease who've been diagnosed for 7 years or more, whatever it is, and they'll be able to put those criteria in, and they'll get that anonymized data, so it will be completely anonymized. At that point, they'll also be able to ask for biospecimens associated with those samples, and then that's subject to a second vetting process, because obviously the biospecimens is a more valuable resource, and so we want to make sure that the research study is valid. So that will go to a panel for review and approval, and then the specimens will get shipped to the researcher. If that researcher wants to do a study for which we don't have samples, so say they're in the system and they say that this cohort is exactly what I want, but I need saliva, I don't, urine sample on a time frame, or I need repeat collections of blood over a period of time, we have the opportunity, not the researcher, but us at Solve, we have the opportunity to privately message those individuals and ask them if they're interested in being part of a study. And if they are, they can click on that button that we saw earlier on Studies I'm Enrolled In, and you can fill out an additional consent that will be a consent to be part of a specific study that might require a specific sample collection. So hopefully that answers your question. The one other thing I just want to say about the researcher interface, One of the things that frustrates me, and I know many people, is how siloed the research can be. And so there is a mechanism, if you search for a cohort of data and another researcher has used that same data set or a portion of that same data set on another study, it will flag that in the system and it give you an opportunity to connect to that person so that you can see what they've done, what their results were. And the goal is that you can then build, rather than starting de novo all the time, you can build on what the people have learned with that same cohort. And one of the requirements, kind of the terms and conditions for researchers using the data, is that they have to commit to being able to be connected to each other, and they have to commit to data sharing with the rest of the community. So we're going to have some stipulations around that, so that the community isn't about patients and healthy controls giving us data and then they never hear from us. The community, to my mind, is clinicians, researchers, individuals with a disease, their family members, and we're all in this together. And so there's an obligation that everybody is on an equal footing, and that you know, researchers, if they're going to use this information for research, have an obligation to share that data back to the community.
Wonderful. And that's personally something that I really, really was excited about to hear, because being in this field for almost 5 years now, seeing the siloed and seeing studies repeated rather than building, it's definitely something I think the community has seen as a problem. And I really am so excited to see this registry tackle that huge problem. So we're coming up at the end of our time today. So I have one last question that I will pose, but there are many, many more we didn't get to. So again, we will respond back directly by email, or you can always email your questions to us at solvecfs@solvecfs.org to share them there, and we'll actually share them with the research team and have them get back to you. This question is something that I personally share with the folks who asked it, is how healthy do healthy controls need to be? And thank you, Laura, for asking that question, because that's something as a caregiver in my own family we've definitely wrestled with.
Yeah, so Alison and Elle on my team keep telling me off for using the word healthy controls, but I find it hard, because if someone says to me, will you be a control, it just is a bit of a weird, I don't know, the lexicon I feel like is around this healthy control. But Emily, to your point, there isn't a health test to be a healthy control. You just need to be an individual who doesn't have any CFS, and then all of the other information, you know, about comorbid conditions that you might have, or things which are affecting your health, will be captured, and obviously they can be integrated into whatever research comparisons happen. So you don't have to be healthy. There isn't a health requirement for a healthy control, and I should stop saying the word healthy.
No, I really appreciate that, because as you know, my mother has ME CFS, and so I feel I just share my genetic information with her, and I thought that I would be a helpful resource, but at the same time I have my own health concerns and I didn't want those to somehow corrupt the data. So it's really helpful to know that my data is still valuable, even though I may not be 100% healthy. I don't think anybody is 100% healthy.
No, I don't think anyone is. I mean, and we really encourage people to share this resource with their friends and family. Like I said, we want to get our healthy control numbers up closer to our enrollment for individuals with ME CFS. So anything that you guys can do to help us with that. We're also, Elle on my team has created kind of a community toolkit thing, which has some really cool resources to help you more easily share on social media and by email, to reach out to your friends and family, either by email or on social media platforms. So that will be going live shortly as well, and we would really appreciate you sharing this resource.
Absolutely. Well, as we wrap up this amazing presentation today, Oved or Sadie, were there any final thoughts that you wanted to share with folks about the registry?
I mean, I started my presentation this way, but I'd like to end it. I just want to thank all of you on the phone today. Like I said, you helped us build it, you're helping us grow it, you're helping us evolve it, and none of it would be possible without the engagement that we've had in this community. So thank you.
Yeah, and I can only echo that. Thank you again.
Well, and thank you all for joining us today. Before we sign off, I just want to remind folks we have a really fascinating webinar coming up on August 27th with the one, the only, the infamous Dr. Tony Komaroff from Harvard University.
Tony K.
Tony K. We love Tony K. He's also on our Research Advisory Council, and he'll be presenting on August 27th on Does COVID-19 Cause ME/CFS in Some People? It's sort of a throwback to his exactly 10 years ago. He did a presentation with us on the viral impacts of ME/CFS and post-viral ME/CFS. So we're circling back 10 years later with new questions and hopefully new answers. And of course, I'm sure you're all burning to find out the newest information about COVID-19 and how you can protect yourself. So please make sure to sign up. That information is on our website. That's www.solveme.org. And again, please share your questions with us through email or on the questions box. We'll keep the webinar open for a few more moments so you can continue to enter your questions that we'll get back to later. And once again, we are so grateful for your support. We are really proud to serve you as a community, and we hope to see you again soon. So thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.